Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm very excited finally to introduce my biggest database on my site. I would call it like in the Chessable style, lifetime Bogo-Indian repertoire for black. Now, so what is Bogo-Indian? I want first to show you the starting moves. So bishop before check. To be honest, I was pretty sure it's a solid opening, but I was not very inspired by this opening. I always felt it's something that, kind of like old school guys playing, trying to avoid maybe messy theory, I mean, my point is that the main line will be bishop d2 c5. As far, according to my research, it's called Vitolinsh variation, named after Latvian international master Alvis Vitolinsh, and we're gonna talk about this very interesting pawn structure. Again, I was in some way skeptical about this pawn structure. I have some experience playing against this pawn structure with white, and I felt it's a very pleasant play. For white, I was getting this through Catalan move order. I used to play this through QueensIndian move order, and I kind of like always enjoy playing with white. But the times has changed. My opinion has evolved, and I was very inspired by the games of Peruvian Grandmaster Jose Martinez Alcantara, the famous guy, super blitz player who had all these matches with Vladimir Kravnik. Very strong player, especially in blitz. So going over his games and the way he handles this opening, like really inspired me to work on this opening, and I discovered something unusual, and I would like to do something new for my presentation. I have never done this. I want to show you a couple of pawn structures that kind of like changed my opinion about this variation. So let me start with this position. So for instance, when I was playing with white and was getting something like this, I thought like, well, that's really a very pleasant position. We control the center, but things are not so simple, and it appears white kind of like stuck here while black is waiting for maybe knight getting to c5, d5 quite often is positional mistake. Knight comes to c5, makes life easier for black. Meanwhile, in some position we can even take e4. Surprisingly, was a big surprise for me. So this is position to understand that we are doing pretty well in this type of position. So now, second position, to my shock, I actually discovered that after white plays thematic a3 and takes on b4, and I executed this in my one of the white games. I remember, and my opponent, very strong grandmaster, recaptured with a knight on b4, so I put knight on c3 and enjoy very solid positional advantage throughout the game. But here comes a b4, and once again the key is that black is looking for getting the knight to c5 square, and it appears the pawn structure somewhat maybe damaged, but black has a lot of activity. So this is pawn structure number 2 for understanding. Number 3, in the line where white blocks bishop before check with knight d2, and we eventually take bishop d2. Obviously after a3 we go for d5, and that's a modern way to treat this position. Also there are some games of Kravnik, I guess after his matches with the Jose Martinez, he liked the way he handles these positions. And the point, we just like we go for the clash in the center. It's where comes bishop b7, sometimes bishop a6. Obviously knight comes to d7, we play c5. Very interesting, very concrete play. It seems like at first glance we play into white hands because white has a bishop pair, but always activity compensates white bishop pair advantage. So this is the structure number 3. So I would like to mention that as I mentioned before. So even sometimes we can capture e4 and allow this backward pawn, and once again activity fully compensates our vulnerability of pawn structure. So once again, so we have this. Now, do we have something classical, old-fashioned Bogo-Indian pawn structure? Yes, we do. So for instance, here with this specific move order, we also get in this type of position. So overall, what I like about this opening, it's first of all, it's very active. It's in many cases imbalanced pawn structure. So it's whether imbalanced pawn structure, maybe imbalanced material where white gets bishop pair. So it's not those lines where we have d4, d5, nothing against them. They're very solid. I have a lot of material like that on my side, but this is something special. I would even say something to consider when you like in must-win situations. And well, finally, let's go for the full presentation. And before I do this, I would like first to remind you guys that if you like my material, you enjoy my work, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Of course, it would be appreciated if you like my video, leave the comments. Always highly recommended to hit the notification button so that you will be maybe one of the first to get a new material. Hopefully download my file, or maybe you'll get some new ideas from my video so you already can play. And yeah, it helps with algorithms. It helps to develop my YouTube channel. And let's go. So that's the initial move order. So we start with move e6. So what will be the coverage? In the beginning, I mentioned knight f3 move, but of course, this is not the only one. G3 is Catalan. That's very important. It's the main alternative. Now, I would like also to mention that there will be coverage of move bishop f4 that lately became quite tricky. There is material on this on modern chess. And here I will come up with the idea, which is, I would say, in the spirit of Bogo. So we give check. The whole point is knight d2, and we play knight c6. And the main line goes like this. So as always, it's not even, I don't need even to mention this. For those who are familiar with my work, it will be detailed. All moves covered, like for instance here, the main move knight f3, but a3, e3, everything will be covered. But I'll show you just the main idea. We play d6, and when a3 comes, we capture on d2, queen d2, and a5. So it's very, very Bogo-Indian style. And very interesting play. Not so many games, if I remember correctly, played maybe by Pragnananda, but there are not so many games in this position. So that was move bishop f4. So now going back to this position, what else I will be covering? I will be covering a3. Just kind of a practical approach to avoid Bogo-Indian. So what we do here, I think it depends on the taste. Some people might play c5 and claim that it's a good Benoni, but I prefer d5, and after, let's say, cd5, ed5, knight c3, c6, so that's the main line. All the rest also covered, of course. We'll get a queen's gambit, exchange variation, which stands pretty well in main lines, but here we have a3, which is not super useful move. So I think it's very ambitious, very challenging approach, very principled approach for black. Black is doing really well. Now, so that's move a3 now, and finally move bishop g5, another tricky move, but I want to make sure that you will be covered everywhere so no surprises. And now I used to play this move, quite tricky, recently played a lot by Alexander Grishuk. If you pull the database, online database, you will see a lot of games. If I'm not mistaken, also by Super GM Eric Geisy as well. And it's important to know what we do here. So I decided to go with very aggressive approach here, h6 and g5. Very interesting, like why not if it works so well? h5, so we are threatening h4. Now, obviously, h3 will be covered, knight d2, so that's not a good move. The main move by far is f3. And here, both c5, playing Benoni type of position, or even going for d5 and then c5, played by Jan Nepomniachtchi, very active, very aggressive. Black is doing really good. Very good line to know, and with good chances to take over very quickly. So, Let's go to our main lines. So my favorite Catalan. So what is happening here? G3, bishop G2, obviously. Bishop b4 check. We'll have all bishop d2, knight d2. Now, there will be no coverage of knight c3 because actually here I'm not going to take on Nimzo, just to mention that. So it's a pure Nimzo. I'm not covering Nimzo-Indian. You can find a lot of sources where Nimzo-Indian is covered. Now, just to mention that, I mean, this line seems like really very reliable for black. So with the move d5, and that's one of the reasons that this move forward with the g3 is not so dangerous. Now we'll have knight d2 here. Now quite often when knight d2 is played and he in some way a little bit lost control over d4 square, so we strike with c5, and well, there is a3, there is dc5, so everything will be covered. So it's definitely not as popular as bishop d2 as I recommended in my Catalan books. So we play c5. So it's the same spirit, the same idea. Now bishop b4 by far the main move, but bishop g2, dc5, d5, everything will be there in my file. Bishop b4, c b4. So now what's the difference with the regular Bogo-Indian? That there is no knight on f3. So this is the way, by the way, I explained for white. So bishop g2 comes and white is able to strike with e4 here, which is supposed to be favorable setup, because in Bogo-Indian white is dreaming about getting e4 and it's very hard. But you probably noticed a few positions were like that I mentioned in the beginning were from this line. So knight e2, a5 we start, castle e5. So that's the strategy, dark square strategy. Knight goes to a6. I mean, we are looking forward to see move d5 one day, and there are so many games that actually white commits this mistake, positional mistake. It's not something huge, but definitely helps black with counterplay. Knight comes to c5. There are many ideas, like after a3 we can go bishop d7. So just some example. And again, like you remember that there was one of the games a4, so we leave this pawn like on b4 and it cannot be attacked. So it's a very nice position for black. We also don't have dark square bishop, so that's really helpful. So that's important line. So that would be the direction. And yeah, I was always pretty sure that white is doing very, very good, but things are not so simple. Things are not so simple, it appears. Now, what happens in the main Bogo-Indian? Main Bogo-Indian, which starts with the move knight f3, we give check bishop b4. So here I decided to do a little bit extra work, knight c3, which is Nimzo-Indian. I could leave this, but I was very curious to leave this pawn, to leave this variation and do some investigation here, and I came to a very interesting conclusion, which is bishop c3, bc3, d6, to play this kind of like close pawn structure. So I have coverage of this. That means those who play Nimzo and maybe they have already some sources on Nimzo, they can find something useful here as well for their Nimzo repertoire. Very good system. Obviously, it's very double-edged, it's imbalanced. Main line goes queen c2, queen e7, e4, we play e5. I would say that's a somewhat Bogo-Indian style. That's why I decided to have coverage of this line. As always, very detailed, hopefully high quality, hopefully will take you for many, many years ahead, as I always say. Now, that was knight c3. So now we have also in this position, besides bishop d2, the main move, of course, we have knight d2, and it's a big question whether bishop d2 or knight d2 are the main moves. And now my approach here to play b6, with the main line being a3, take on d2, all three recaptures possible, and even I would say lately quite fashionable recapture with the knight back. You can find a lot of strong players. So have a good coverage here, bishop b7, e3, d6, our setup. White has alternatives to e3, obviously, so that's the line. Now bishop d2, there is queen d2 recapture, so we go with castle, we play d5, one of the positions that I mentioned in the beginning, d5 with a clear plan to counterattack in the center, bishop b7, oe6, knight d7, c5, and in my opinion, black is doing very well. I didn't find any problems. Not surprising, some strong players like Vladimir Kramnik started to play this. So that's another line, and pretty much bishop d2, it's probably statistically top choice. We go bishop b7. Now there is e3, there is bishop g5. Now I thought e3 may be the most challenging according to the theory, and now very interesting approach to play knight e4, get the bishop if possible, let's say after bishop d3, and play this type of, once again, I would say classical Bogo-Indian, knight d7, or maybe Nimzo even, Nimzo type of position, knight d7. Yes, white will get some space advantage, no questions about this, but we are very solid, and we traded already two pair of pieces, so we don't really feel cramped, and of course we can undermine with e5, c5 at appropriate moment. So that's another line. And finally, guys, bishop d2, c5, bishop takes b4, c takes b4. That's definitely the main line. There will be coverage, if I'm not mistaken, 7 moves I will be covering here, but the main by far is g3. So here my setup, very important not to rush with the castle, to play b6. So we get our bishop to b7, castle, castle, and we'll play kind of like similar strategy. We go for e5. So for example, I felt like that's a very interesting move for white to get control over e4. Before playing knight d2, we play d6, knight d2, queen c7, e4, e5. So that's the line. Very, very interesting play. Very imbalanced position. I have much higher opinion about pawn before, so it's actually, you can see there are so many games where white actually going for a3 move, trying to undermine this pawn. Sometimes we capture on a3, sometimes we try to keep this pawn with a5, knight a6, sometimes even we get the pawn on b4. So very excited about this database, feels like very double-edged, very interesting weapon to play for win, in my opinion. And I hope you'll enjoy. So as always, guys, you know the drill. If you want detailed PGN file, please head over to my personal webpage, Ask-Avrukh.com, where you can get full file, very detailed, very, very big. As I mentioned before, it's my biggest file by far on my site. And if not, you got the ideas, all the directions in the main lines, so you can do your own research now with the help of already clear directions. So it would be very helpful. And guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you hopefully soon on my YouTube channel.